In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, all praise is due to Allah, and may peace and blessings be upon the Messenger of Allah, his family, and his companions. These are some obstacles encountered in spiritual growth and in the pursuit of knowledge, recurring issues that many people face and frequently ask about. I have gathered them here briefly for clarity and benefit. The first obstacle: lack of clarity about the meaning and consequences of sincerity. This is among the doubts that confront a person who is journeying toward Allah in his worship and in seeking knowledge. It often occurs at different stages of one's life, and many do not find someone to explain it clearly. First, the problem, the doubt, and its consequences. This obstacle revolves around a lack of clear understanding of ikhlas, sincerity. The doubt reaches a person through several paths. 1. Lack of conceptual clarity. The meaning of sincerity is vague in a person's mind. He does not grasp it practically, in behavior, in action, or in the heart, so he cannot truly be sincere. 2. Viewing sincerity as an unreachable level. Another form of doubt arises when a person views sincerity as a very lofty station. When he reads the sayings of the righteous predecessors, he sees extraordinary examples of sincerity, compares himself to them, and feels far from such perfection. Consequently, he accuses himself of insincerity, and this leads to discouragement, especially at the beginning of his journey of worship or knowledge. The consequences of this misconception: abandoning deeds. He stops working, whether it be studying, worshiping, or serving Allah, because he believes he lacks sincerity. Self-accusation. He constantly blames himself for not being sincere. Weakening of determination and willpower. He feels that time passes without achieving sincerity, and the many texts he hears about its importance make him feel even more incapable. Thus, his enthusiasm fades and his will weakens. Second, the answers and remedies. This doubt can be addressed and clarified in several ways. 1. Clarifying the basic meaning of sincerity. The primary meaning of sincerity is to seek the face of Allah, that one's first and foremost motive in any act of worship or pursuit of knowledge is Allah's pleasure and approval. One may be confronted by doubts, disturbances, or whispers from Shaitan, yet this does not nullify sincerity. As long as the fundamental motive is the face of Allah, then the essence of sincerity is present, even if it still needs purification and deepening over time. 2. Sincerity is a lifelong project. Sincerity is not attained all at once. It is a lifelong journey. A person should not expect to reach perfect sincerity at the very beginning of his path toward Allah. Sincerity grows and matures over time. It becomes pure through experience, patience, and trials. The more a person increases in knowledge, worship, and understanding of Allah's names and attributes, the more his sincerity becomes established. As he endures tests and resists temptations, his sincerity strengthens and becomes firm. 3. The many dimensions of sincerity. Sincerity has many aspects, and all of them count as sincerity. When one acts seeking the face of Allah, that is sincerity. When one acts seeking Allah's pleasure, that is sincerity. When one acts to benefit others or serve fellow Muslims, that too is sincerity. Thus, the concept of sincerity is broad and inclusive. Everything that leads to Allah's pleasure, the benefit of His servants, and the fulfillment of His religion falls under the meaning of sincerity. This broader understanding protects a person from Shaitan's trap of making him feel insincere. 4. Consistency nurtures. Sincerity, continuity, and righteous actions nurture sincerity. Cutting them off destroys it. Persevering in learning, worship, Quran memorization, calling to Allah, reflection, and remembrance. All of these cultivate sincerity and strengthen it. What Shaitan desires most is for a person to quit. Therefore, he increases doubts and hesitation to push him away from the path. As the early scholars said, we sought knowledge for other than Allah, but it refused to be except for Allah. That is, they began their pursuit with mixed intentions, but through perseverance, struggle, and supplication, their sincerity grew, and their motives were purified, until their deeds became purely for the sake of Allah alone. The second obstacle, accusing oneself of hypocrisy and showing off, Riya. This obstacle is among the doubts that confront a worshipper of Allah, a seeker of his path, and a student of sacred knowledge. It is one of the most subtle traps of Shaitan, capable of weakening one's resolve and hindering spiritual progress if misunderstood. First, the problem, the doubt, and its consequences. The problem lies in a person's constant self-accusation of hypocrisy and showing off, where Shaitan gains control over the believer's thoughts and convinces him that he is a hypocrite, a pretender, or that the verses describing the hypocrites apply to him, that he is among those deceived by their own deeds. The negative outcomes Shaitan seeks through this doubt. Abandonment of deeds. The person views himself as a hypocrite, and since the hypocrite will face the severest punishment on the day of judgment and be exposed before all creation, he believes the only escape is to stop doing good deeds altogether. Depression and anxiety. Such a person lives under persistent inner turmoil, consumed by fear and doubt. Sorrow and hopelessness. The enemy of Allah casts upon the believer a deep sense of sorrow, making him feel trapped in hypocrisy and fearful of disgrace. Why does Shaitan want to sadden the believer? Allah revealed the reason in the Quran, that he may cause grief to those who believe. Surah Al-Mujadala 58:10. Shaitan seeks to cast sorrow into the heart of the believer, for once sadness dominates the heart, he abandons his good deeds. His performance becomes weak and unmotivated. He loses optimism, zeal, and productivity. His willpower and determination fade. He becomes preoccupied with his sadness instead of his journey toward Allah, unable to advance in worship or knowledge. Second, the answers and remedies. This doubt can be treated and clarified through 4 key principles. 1. Distinguishing between praiseworthy and blameworthy self-accusation. The praiseworthy type. This is when self-accusation leads to renewal and self-purification. A person blames himself for fear of hypocrisy to strengthen sincerity, to avoid the traits of hypocrites, and to humble himself before Allah. He reads about sincerity, seeks refuge from hypocrisy and showing off, and nurtures humility and brokenness before his Lord. This attitude is praiseworthy and rewarded. Be the blameworthy type. This is when self-accusation leads to abandoning good deeds, when a person stops worship, seeking knowledge, or calling to Allah because he sees himself unworthy, fearing that his acts are mere pretense. This state is inspired by Shaitan and is blameworthy. Rule: whenever self-accusation leads to abandoning good deeds, it is a whisper from Shaitan intended to halt the believer's journey toward Allah. 2. The cure lies in striving, not surrender. The remedy is through mujahada, spiritual striving, not despair. Strive to be sincere. Strive to repel insincerity and hypocrisy. Strive to avoid the qualities of hypocrites and those who show off. As Allah said, "And those who strive in our cause, we will surely guide them to our ways." Surah Al-Ankabut 29:69. 3. The cure through seeking refuge and supplication. Seek refuge in Allah from hypocrisy and showing off. Turn to Him with humility, prayer, and supplication, asking for steadfastness and sincerity. Among the supplications of the Prophet ﷺ was, "O Allah, I seek refuge in you from hypocrisy and showing off." Reported by Ahmad and Al-Nasa, authentic chain. 4. Letting Allah see your hatred for hypocrisy. Among the strongest signs of sincerity is to let Allah know what is in your heart, that you hate hypocrisy and showing off, that you fear them, and that you seek only His pleasure. When Allah knows that you despise hypocrisy and love sincerity, He purifies your heart, protects you from deceit, and strengthens your faith and devotion. The third obstacle, the believer's zeal in worship. When among others, this obstacle arises from one of the doubts and confusions that confront the devout worshiper of Allah, the seeker of His pleasure, the student of knowledge, and the religiously committed person. First to the problem, the doubt. The issue lies in how Satan deceives the believing servant by making him compare his state of devotion to Allah when he is among his brothers, colleagues, and companions who support him versus when he is alone. Observation. A person may notice that his spiritual energy changes. He feels more active in worship, in seeking knowledge, in weeping before Allah, in supplication, and in remembrance when he is among others, but weaker when alone. Satan's manipulation. Satan exploits this state to convince the believer that this difference indicates a flaw, hypocrisy, weakness, or a lack of true faith. The result: the believer falls into anxiety and sadness because of this misconception. Second, the response and solutions. This doubt can be clarified and resolved through several points. 1. This is a natural trait of the human soul, and the Sharia has addressed it. The difference in a person's behavior when with others versus when alone is a natural aspect of the human soul. This conforms to human nature. A person who experiences this, or whom Satan accuses because of it, has not deviated from the natural disposition of mankind. Because this is part of human nature, the Sharia addressed it by commanding believers to remain with the community of Muslims and the congregation of the faithful. Allah Almighty said, "And cooperate in righteousness and piety, but do not cooperate in sin and aggression." Quran 5:2. The Prophet advised the believer to stay with the group, saying, "The wolf only devours the stray sheep." Reported by Abu Dawud, number 547. The prescribed remedy: a person should increase his companionship with righteous brothers who strengthen his faith and support him in his servitude to Allah. 2. The presence of others is not a measure of showing off, Riyah. The mere fact that one worships in the presence of others does not mean that he is showing off. Even a person who worships in solitude can fall into Riyah. The true measure of Riyah, when the motive for one's action is other than seeking Allah's pleasure. Whether one is alone or with others is not a criterion for sincerity or hypocrisy. It is one of Satan's tricks to cause the believer distress. One must realize that being more active in the company of others does not necessarily mean insincerity. Example: during Ramadan, people generally become more active in worship due to the collective spirit of devotion. This increased motivation from being around other worshipers is natural and not a sign of Riyah. 3. Walking on two paths, collective and private worship. A believer should maintain two paths in his spiritual journey. 1. Collective worship. He should join the believers in prayer, bow with those who bow, prostrate with those who prostrate, make dua with those who supplicate, recite Quran with those who recite, and seek knowledge with fellow students, teachers, and companions. 2. Private worship, seclusion. He should also have private acts of devotion known only to Allah, such as personal remembrance, private supplication, secret charity, or heartfelt solitude with his Lord. As in the hadith of the seven whom Allah will shade on the day when there is no shade but His, a man who remembers Allah in solitude and his eyes overflow with tears. Reported by Al-Bukhari, number 1423, Muslim, no, 1031. This private worship purifies the heart, pleases the Lord, and nurtures sincerity. Conclusion: a believer should walk on two paths. He has public acts of worship shared with his brothers in faith, and he has private acts of devotion that are known only to Allah. This balance between communal worship and personal sincerity is the hallmark of a sound heart and a mature servitude to Allah. The fifth obstacle: I read but did not memorize. This is the fifth obstacle faced by the servant of Allah, the seeker of his path, and the student of knowledge. First, the problem, the doubt, and its consequences. The problem arises when a person reads texts or books, such as the works of Ibn al-Qayyim, Ibn Taymiyyah, or other scholars. Yet when he tries to recall or review them, he finds that the information is not fully retained in his mind. Observation: after finishing a book and closing it, he attempts to recollect some of its points, but finds very little remains in his memory. Result: he blames himself for not memorizing, not reading properly, or not benefiting, and the solution he considers is stopping reading, feeling bored, or abandoning the pursuit of knowledge. Second, the response and remedies. This doubt can be addressed through several key points. 1. Distinguishing between reading and memorization. A person must distinguish between reading and memorization and between the tools of each. Tools of memorization: accuracy, mastery, quality, and committing to memory thoroughly. Tools of reading are not the same as those for memorization. Conclusion: if one tries to measure his knowledge using tools inappropriate for reading, i.e., using memorization standards, the result will be inaccurate and discouraging. Therefore, reading and memorization are two distinct paths. 2. Choosing the appropriate path. A person must choose one of the two paths and evaluate himself according to it, not the other. The natural path of reading. When reading a book, one does not memorize it entirely. Naturally, after finishing, parts of it may be forgotten or not fully recalled, and over time, much of the content may fade from memory. Reason: this is the nature of reading, not memorization. 3. Addressing forgetfulness through continuity. Forgetfulness should not be treated by stopping reading or blaming oneself, but by continuing to read. Practical approach: what you read today and forget can be revisited in another book covering the same principles or in greater depth. What you missed or forgot in one book can be reinforced in another. Key measure. Did this reading bring you closer to Allah? Did it benefit your worship? Did it remove ignorance or help you correct aspects of yourself? This is the true standard of benefit. 4. Methods to manage forgetfulness. Forgetfulness is a common issue in the read but did not memorize problem and can be addressed by several means, such as recording benefits. Write down key points in the book margins or transfer them to an electronic device. Reviewing benefits. Periodically revisit the notes and points. Explaining and summarizing. Explain the book or summarize it to reinforce understanding. Conclusion. There are multiple strategies to manage forgetfulness, preventing self-blame for lack of memorization or benefit. The fourth obstacle. I did not benefit from my pursuit of knowledge. I did not memorize or master it. This obstacle is among the challenges that confront seekers of knowledge, devoted servants of Allah, and those striving in worship. First, the problem, the doubt, and its consequences. The problem arises when a person feels, after years of seeking knowledge, reading, memorizing the Quran, or performing acts of worship, that he has not benefited or that he has not achieved the spiritual states described by the pious predecessors. How a person tests himself. Often he uses an improper standard, trying to recall certain texts, rulings, or lessons he studied, but fails or notices that others of similar age have mastered them better. Dangerous results Shaitan seeks. Abandonment of deeds. Shaitan wants the believer to stop seeking knowledge, worshiping, contributing to the call to Allah, and practicing internal acts of devotion. Self-reproach. The person accuses himself of not benefiting and wasting his time. Common behaviors of those caught in this doubt. 1. The one who abandons, stops pursuing knowledge or worship, thinking he has not mastered or benefited. This is mistaken. 2. The one who regresses, returns to early stages, memorizing small texts or revisiting old lessons, abandoning forward progress, also mistaken. Second, the response and remedies. This doubt can be clarified through several key points. 1. The fault lies in the testing method. The believer tests himself using a flawed method, like a student taking an exam. Did I memorize this text? Do I recall this ruling? Because of forgetfulness, lapse of time, or imperfect recall, he concludes that he has not benefited. Conclusion. The measurement tool is invalid. The judgment is therefore incorrect. 2. The true measure of benefit, worship, and action. Benefit is not measured by memorization or mastery, but by, has your pursuit of knowledge drawn you closer to Allah? Has your worship increased? Has your understanding of how to deal with Allah deepened? Have you advanced spiritually? Have you discovered and practiced new aspects of servitude? If the answer is yes, then true benefit has been achieved, because knowledge is ultimately for closeness to Allah. 3. The true measure of benefit, lifting ignorance. The real measure of benefit is the reduction of ignorance. As long as your ignorance has decreased and your servitude to Allah is clearer, and you act on what is from the religion and draws you closer to Allah, benefit has been attained. Example. Even if you do not currently remember a proof for the duha prayer, as long as you perform it correctly and understand its significance, the benefit remains. 4. Memorization is not the ultimate standard. Some people mistakenly believe that benefit is measured by how much one has memorized. Memorization is a tool, not the final measure. Addressing forgetfulness through review, revision, meticulous study, written notes, structured memorization programs, and studying with others. 5. Correcting the view of those more advanced. A person should correct his perspective when seeing someone more knowledgeable, precise, or advanced in memorization. The proper spiritual attitude. Rejoice that Allah has placed such individuals to serve the religion and contribute to knowledge. Positive use. Turn this into motivation to draw closer to Allah, rather than a reason for despair or sadness.